Azmi start ചെയ്തോളൂ ട്ടാ.
Okay, miss. Hello and welcome to today's webinar, The Mathematics of Digital Communication. Let's begin the session with a prayer. I invite Sri Devi from S5 Maths AWC for the same.
കാരുണ്യ സിന്ധുവാമല്ലാഹുവിൻ തിരുനാമത്തിലോതുന്നു ദിവ്യമാം സൂക്തികൾ ലോകങ്ങളൊക്കെയും കാത്തുരക്ഷിച്ചിടും ലോകൈകനാഥനെ വാഴ്ത്തുന്നു സർവരും. കാരുണ്യമേറുന്ന രക്ഷകാ നീ കൃപ പൂരം നിരന്തരം വർഷിക്ക ഞങ്ങളിൽ തീർപ്പുകൾ നൽകുന്ന വാസരെ ഞങ്ങളിൽ കാരുണ്യമോടു നീ കാത്തുകൊള്ളേണം. ധ്യാനത്തിലാമജ്ജമാകും മനസ്സുമായി കാലം കഴിക്കുന്നു സർവധാന്യങ്ങളും നിന്നോട് മാത്രം നിവേദനം ചെയ്തിടും. വ്യാജദൈവങ്ങളെ തേടില്ലൊരിക്കലും. നേരായ മാർഗം തെളിക്കണേ രക്ഷക, പാരാതെ നിത്യം നയിക്കുമാറാകണേ. സത്തുക്കൾ പോയൊരു മാർഗീണ ദൈവമേ, ലക്ഷ്യത്തിലെത്താൻ തുണയ്ക്കുമാറാകണേ. നിൻ കോപവജ്ഞിയിൽ വീണൊരു മത്യന്റെ പിന്റെ അയക്കല്ലേ രക്ഷകാ ഞങ്ങളെ.
ഗസ്റ്റ് കയറിയിട്ടുണ്ടല്ലോ അല്ലെ ദീക്ഷിത് സാറ്?
ഹലോ.
ഓക്കെ 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 ഓക്കെ.
Next, we move to the welcome speech by Mrs. Shijila, HOD, Department of Mathematics, Ansar Women's College.
Good afternoon, everyone. Honorable Chief Guest, Mr. Dikshit, respected Principal, Vice Principal, teachers, and my dear students. Hearty welcome to all the participants to the webinar on the topic, The Mathematics for Digital Communication, organized by Department of Mathematics, Ansar Women's College, Perimbla. So let me move to the duty bestowed upon me to welcome the gathering. First, I welcome our beloved Principal, Farida Ansari, who has given this opportunity. Next, I would like to take this opportunity to extend a warm welcome to our chief guest, Mr. Dikshit PK, research scholar, Indian Institute of Bangalore, and postdoctoral researcher at Samsung Research Institute. Welcome you, sir. Next, I welcome our Vice Principal, Arif sir. Last but not least, I welcome all the faculty members and my dear students to this program. I assure the webinar will be profitable, enjoyable, and fruitful to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I invite Mrs. Farida Ansari, Principal, Ansar Women's College, for the presidential address.
Respected Chief Guest, Dikshit sir, HOD of Mathematics Department, Shijila Miss, Vice Principal Arif Mohammed sir, and all other faculty members and my dear students, very pleasant afternoon to one and all. As Shijila Miss just introduced, we are having a national webinar on the topic, Mathematics for Digital Communication. I'm not going to speak anything about the topic since we have an eminent personality here with us to share his views and give you a lengthy discourse on what actually the topic is. I would like to remind you one thing. As Abraham Lincoln said, if you give me 6 hours to chop a tree, I'll use the first 4 hours to sharpen my axe. See, his words, when we it becomes a reality when we compare it to the changing educational scenario in our world. Our entire educational system is changing day by day. So, as students of mathematics, your subject mathematics is defined as the queen of sciences. So, definitely, you have to sharpen your knowledge in order to have a deep understanding of all the areas of mathematics, especially the topic which we have selected today, that is mathematics for digital communication. Hearty congratulations for the department for organizing a program like this so that my students, they get an opportunity to enrich themselves, sharpen their axe and start cutting down heights and reach heights using their knowledge. And let me also welcome once again the resource person Deekshit sir for joining us and promising to give a discourse on the topic. Hope you'll all enjoy and enrich from his talk. With his few words, let me wind up. Have a good session. Have a nice day. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, ma'am. Without further ado, in our session, I'd like to invite our resource person, Mr. Deepshik PK, for the presentation. Sir, please.
Hello, am I audible? കേൾക്കാൻ പറ്റുന്നില്ലേ എൻ്റെ സൗണ്ട് കേൾക്കാം?
Yes, sir. It's audible.
Yeah, sure, thanks. So I'll switch off the video to save bandwidth. Like there is an issue with the network here, so I hope you have seen me. And I'll just switch off the video and I'll just go to the presentation mode. So just give me some 30 seconds or so. I'll just load the presentation and we'll start. Okay. I hope you are able to see my screen. Is that so? Hello. Screen visible? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, sure. Thanks. So, first of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to this webinar. I'm really happy to be here and present whatever little bit of information that I can offer to you. So, and whenever possible, I would think that it is okay to switch to Malayalam. And if you have any questions, you can always stop me in between. You can ask questions in Malayalam or English or whichever. So that there is, I hope to keep it a bit informal. ഞാൻ എൻ്റെ ഇന്നത്തെ ഓഫീസ് ടൈമിൽ നിന്ന് ഞാൻ ജസ്റ്റ് ഒരു കുറച്ച് സമയം കടമെടുത്തിട്ട് ഇങ്ങോട്ട് കയറി വരികയാണ്. അപ്പോൾ ഇംഗ്ലീഷിൽ സംസാരിച്ച് പെട്ടെന്ന് ഒരു പ്രാർത്ഥനയോടുകൂടി ഈ ടോക്കിലേക്ക് കയറി വന്നപ്പോൾ ആദ്യം കേൾക്കാൻ കഴിഞ്ഞൊരു പ്രാർത്ഥനയാണ്. സോ അത് വളരെ സുഖമുള്ള ഒരു അനുഭവമായിട്ട് തോന്നി. സോ ഐ വുഡ് ലൈക്ക് ടു താങ്ക് ഓർഗനൈസേഴ്സ് ഫോർ ദ എഫേർട്ട് ദേ ഹാവ് പുട്ട് ഇൻ. And I think I have roughly 1 hour or so. So I'll try to wind up the talk within the time that is allotted to me. And as I said, if you have any questions, just feel free to stop me in between and ask. And then, so respected principal just mentioned about a quote about Abraham Lincoln, and I was reminded of another quote by an American author, I think this quote is attributed to Mark Twain, who said, I didn't have the time to write a short letter, so I ended up writing a long one. So, in order to be precise, in order to be to the point, you need time. So, if at all you think that there is ambiguity, that is because of the lack of time. So, I'll try to make it as succinct as possible. Okay, so and I hope you are all doing good wherever you are and you are staying safe. So when I was asked to give this talk on to a mathematical in a mathematical department, I was thinking of the kind of topics that I would be able to present to such an audience. And my fundamental expertise is in communication. So I did my BTech in electronics and communication, and I did my PhD specifically in communication engineering. And communication engineering, I realized along the way that it is a topic that is getting the communication technology that we are enjoying, that we are using these days. All these things were built much before, or the idea to build these systems came much before the technology was actually developed to accommodate uh, uh, these ideas. So that basically was made possible by the use of mathematics, and this is a field of engineering that makes heavy use of various mathematical techniques, tools that we learn in our undergraduate studies and in our graduate studies. And in a 1 hour talk, it is quite difficult to put everything together. So I thought I'll just give some glimpses of what how mathematics is getting used in communication assets. Okay, so I'll just start. I know it's a Friday afternoon, and let us start with a small story that you might all be familiar with. So you might have heard of this novel, Gulliver's Travels, by an author called Jonathan Swift. It was written in 1726. Okay, so in this novel, so you might all know the story, right? The traveler ends up in an island where there are dwarfs, and all his adventures related to his travels being documented in this book. So in the story, at some point, there is a mention about a fictional machine, ഒരു സാങ്കല്പിക യന്ത്രത്തെ കുറിച്ചിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു മെൻഷൻ ഈ നോവലിലുണ്ട്. It's called in the novel, it is called the engine. That fictional machine is called the engine. So interestingly, what this machine does is the following. So what the author says is, the most ignorant person will be able to write books in philosophy, poetry, politics, laws, mathematics, and theology. So you must remember that this was written way back in 1726. That was in a time when humans were communicating using letters primarily, right? And so this is some interesting aspect that is mentioned in this story. But what is more intriguing, what is more interesting is that now if we think about it, we all know about such a machine, right? At least a machine may not be able to do all these things by itself, but we are all using it, right? So we make use of such a machine to contribute to philosophy, poetry, politics, laws, right? I'm talking about the computer. Now, what is interesting is that in that machine, that fictional machine that he said, how does it write? How does it write? Okay, it makes use of the frequency. Like in every written language, there is some statistics as to how often a particular word is used. For example, in English, we know the letter E is the most used vowel, right? So you know that certain letters, certain words are used quite often, and some of the words will be followed. If you are given a particular word, we know that it is going to be immediately followed by a certain other word. So there are these patterns in language, and we can look at the frequency, how often a particular word is being used, a particular noun is being used, or a verb is being used to generate a text. Okay, so the key word that I'm stressing here is frequency, or the number of times a particular entity is getting used. So interestingly, this machine envisages, it talks about the use of statistics in written communication. 1926. Now, if you switch to 2018, so there was this news that came a couple of years back. So this portrait that you see here, the painting that you see here, was done by an artificial intelligence algorithm. So there is no human intervention. There is no painter whatsoever involved. So there is some machine, so there is some algorithm that actually drew by itself. Nobody told it what to draw. Okay, so the algorithm just by itself drew this picture. Now you can try to connect to the imagination of the writer in 1726 to what actually transpired in 2018, right? So so that is what. Basically, what I'm trying to get to is to two facts as an introduction. One is how in communication the frequency of the letters, or the probability or the chances, are getting used in language, whether we know it or not. In our daily lives, we get enough examples for this kind of scenario. For example, when you're typing a message in your tech phone, right, it gives you what is the next word to be written, right? So it is in some sense telling you what is going to be the next word. It is predicting what is going to be the next word. How is it possible? What is making this happen? Okay, so this is just a short intro to what I'm about to say, and I'll just start with an apology. So I'm not a mathematician by training. As I said, I'm an electrical engineer, but then electrical engineering, as I said, is a field of applied. It heavily makes use of all the mathematics that you can think of, that we learn in our undergraduate or graduate studies in most creative ways. And I would like to share with you some of those, some of the enthusiasm that I get by doing these things. So if you are not familiar with this book, A Mathematician's Apology, it is a book by G.H. Hardy, and I would like to take this opportunity to tell you to have a look at it if you haven't still heard of this book. It's an interesting read. Now, the year 1948 in history, if you just do a quick Google search, I just did a quick Google search a couple of days back, and these were some of the results that I got. So what happened in 1948? Of course, we know the assassination of Mahatma Gandhi happened in January that year. The state of Israel was born, and World Health Organization was formed by the United Nations. So these are some of the results that Google gave me. Okay, but then there is something, there is a lesser known event, specifically important to a communication engineer, I would say. And because of the prevalence of all this communication technology, I would say it is in some sense one of the landmark event that happened in that particular year. And that is basically the publication of a paper. Okay, it's a technical paper published in the Bell Telephone System Journal. Sorry. And the title of this article was A Mathematical Theory of Communication. Okay. Now, what was, if you think about it, what kind of technologies existed in 1950s, around 1950s, like in 1948, when this paper was written. So I'll get into what that paper is about. So there was electrical telegraph. So that was there around 1840s. There was telephone, Alexander Graham Bell, after whom the lab, so you saw the bell telephone system, the journal, right? So this is the same Bell here, the Alexander Graham Bell. So telephone was there. It was invented way back in 1876. Of course, there was wireless telegraph. So across Atlantic, people had communicated messages through wireless. That was in 1887. And there was AM radio. There was television, and I think around 1927, television was invented. So all these medium of communication existed around that time. But then there were a group of engineers who were who were not impressed, or who had this vision that the rate or the speed of communication is still not at par with what it actually can be. In other words, there is still a lot of room for improvement in terms of how fast you can communicate. When I say how fast you can communicate, just think about sending a letter from one point to other, right? I mean, from my place to say to Kerala now, it may take around 2-3 days, right? So, and then when it comes to telephone, we know how quickly it goes. Sound, how quickly sound can be transmitted, and nowadays we know how quickly videos gets delivered to your mobile phones, right? I mean, so where are these videos coming from? This is there in some server, in some computer somewhere in the world, and at the click, when you're visiting some site, you're just clicking, you're just immediately getting that video, right? So that is in some sense saying you are able to communicate information or communicate things at a very high rate. Now, how was this made possible? So that is the question that I am getting to. So there was communication, there was wireless communication before 1848, there was various forms of communication, there was telegraph, all these things were there. But what was the difference that happened, that was made possible in 1948? So what happened was this, basically, as I said, this paper by a 32-year-old electrical engineer and a mathematician who actually graduated from MIT and was working at the Bell Labs. So he published this article in the Bell System Technical Journal, and his aim was the following. See, I've highlighted a particular section here. If you can read this, it says, the fundamental problem of communication is that of reproducing at one point either exactly or approximately a message selected at another point. And frequently the messages have meaning. We all know that, right? That is, so when I'm sitting here in Bangalore, you are all at various places sitting at the comfort of your home or your office, and I'm telling you, trying to communicate to you some idea, right? So inherently it has meaning, okay? And the one point that he talks about is, I'm sitting here in Bangalore and trying to communicate something to you at some other, sitting at various parts of the world. Now, whatever I'm sending, it is getting reproduced at your own wherever you're sitting, right? And you are able to make out what I'm saying. Now, he actually kind of in the introduction itself, he just says this sentence. So this is the basic problem. What is the problem a communication engineer is trying to address? So you have two parties who might be separated in space. ഒരാൾ ബാംഗ്ലൂരായിരിക്കും ഇരിക്കുന്നുണ്ടാവുക, ഒരാൾ കേരളത്തിലായിരിക്കും ഇരിക്കുന്നുണ്ടാവുക. Now you would like to communicate from person sitting in Bangalore to the person who is sitting in Kerala. Now, how do you do that? And you should not just do that. You can do that in various ways. You should do it at the quickest possible, in the quickest possible way. Okay. When I say quickest possible way, I'm speaking now. Maybe in a delay of 1 or 2 seconds, I'm sure it is kind of reaching to you. Okay. So it is as quick as that. Now, all this development that makes us sit here and talk about all these things is attributed to, single-handedly attributed to this paper. So, a mathematical theory of communication. Now, what is so great about it? So, for the first time, someone actually drew this picture. Now, if you see any communication, engineering textbook or modern day communication textbook, you will find this figure or a variant of it. Okay, so till this point in history, no one has abstracted out what essentially it means to communicate. So someone, as we all know how complicated it is, right? When I'm trying to tell you what is communication, we are thinking of examples, right? A person sitting somewhere and then a person is communicated to another person who is sitting at some other place, right? We all think through examples. Now here is an engineer, here is a mathematician who said, let me just make it unclear. Okay, let me just make it abstract. When I say abstract, let me forget the unnecessary details and focus on what is the most important thing, and let me try to represent it. Now with this vision, if you just look at this figure, you will see that this is how he, so if someone asked Shannon, Claude Shannon, or the author of the paper, what communication means, he that this figure would be his answer. Now think in terms of a layman who is trying to understand this. So so here the first block is an information source. So what is an information source? Information source could be anything. It could be, in this case, I am talking to you, right? So I am producing sound signals, okay, and I'm saying something, right? So I'm saying words, I'm saying it in English, and there is a sequence of words. I'm telling this, so I'm speaking it out. The microphone at my end is capturing it. It goes to my machine, my computer. Some processing happens, right? Something, so it is converted to electrical signals, and these electrical signals, so it goes into my, it's there in my computer, and it gets transmitted out, right? So there is a transmitter. So we all are familiar with antennas, right? At least even if we don't know what exactly it does, we know that there is something called as an antenna, which can capture electrical signals and which can radiate electrical signals. So there is a transmitter. Now you're sending out this message out, right? I mean, the antenna is transmitting this message, and it is getting transmitted, and it is getting received at some other part of the world. Okay, so suppose I'm think that I'm using a Airtel connection to get my internet. Okay, so whatever I'm transmitting, it goes to the Airtel the base station. From there, it gets connected to another Airtel base station, and so and so forth. So it gets transmitted in a certain way. Finally, it gets received at multiple places, right? So there is a receiver. Okay, now there is a receiver, and then there is a destination, and this destination, in this case, this you all people, in this case when I am talking, and if you are asking a question, then it gets reversed, right? Now now in between there is an entity. If you see, there is an entity called as a noise source. So what is a noise source? So this is something something smart that Shannon did. He said that, okay, here there are two parties. One person is trying to talk to another person. They are separated in space, and it gets corrupted by a noise. Now I would like to understand what this guy is saying. A signal which is getting corrupted by noise. Okay. Now this is the basic fundamental block diagram of a general communication system. Okay. So first thing that he did was to give this abstraction. When I say abstraction, I hope it is clear to you. It is saying that you get away with unnecessary details, take the bare minimum ideas, see what is important, and represent it. Okay. So in that sense, this is essentially what it means. Okay. Now, then he asked this question: what is information? So if you see, so this is communication. I told you what a communication system is, right? And right in the beginning, you see something called as an information source. Now he asked this question: what is information? So I don't know if we were born into an era where all this revolution had already happened, and we are born into we were born in a time when we were exposed to these kind of things. Okay, so I don't think any of us would have naturally asked this question: what is information? How do you quantify it? Okay, I can give you examples of an information. Okay, but then a computer, a system, your mobile phone doesn't understand examples, right? What it understands is clear-cut definitions. If you say information, you should translate it into a language that a computer can understand, or a machine can, another machine or a mobile can understand, right? Or your personal laptop or a mobile, whatever it is, it can understand. What is that language? The universal language that any system understands is math, right? Numbers. Ultimately, it boils down to that. Now, in that sense, can you give a mathematical definition of a information? Okay. Why do you need that? If I can define information, then only I can quantify what and how much information is there. Okay. When you say a person A communicates to person B, how much amount of information is getting transferred? If I ask you this question, it might sound a bit odd, right? I mean, what does it mean by how much information? But that there comes Shannon, who asked this question: what is information, and how can you define an information? Okay, so he starts with simple examples. What he says is, okay, information is roughly inversely related to the probability of occurrence of an event, as I have written here. So what does it mean? Okay, now roughly what it means is, more the surprise, more the information. So that makes it at least intuitive to some of you people, right? I hope that is a bit intuitive way of saying it, in the sense that if somebody tells you that, so I'll make this point a bit clear in the coming slides. So just keep in mind the fact that if there is more surprise, if someone is giving you something more, and if there is an element of surprise that is more associated to what he's saying, in roughly it means we all enjoy, we all understand that he is communicating something that you didn't know properly previously, right? So that is basically what I'm trying to get to. Just a word of caution. Actually, like there is the nearby road is a bit noisy. So if you hear some other noise, just I apologize for the inconvenience. I hope it is not a disturbance. So we are at this point. So what is information, and how do you quantify it? Okay, I'll get to an example. Now in probability class, you all, the standard example that we all go with is a coin toss, right? We all are familiar in a basic probability class. We would all have come across what a coin toss experiment is. It is basically just tossing a coin, just like at the beginning of a match, people toss a coin. And we always come across this term, a fair coin. What is a fair coin? It means a coin that is, if you toss it, there is equal chance of it turning up either a head or a tail. Okay, so that is a fair coin. I think at least from a classroom perspective, understand the way it is taught in classrooms, we all understand what a fair coin is, right? Now, but just think about it. Have you ever seen a fair coin in real life? So you all have coins in your wallet, right? Is it a fair coin? So how do we know something is a fair coin? How do we measure something to be a fair coin? Have you ever thought about it? Okay, so that is something to think about, but I hope what it is clear what it means by a fair coin. So there is equal probability of it turning out to be a head or tail. Okay, now okay, and now this is just so if you recognize the movie here, so there is this movie by called No Country for Old Men, in which the villain tosses a coin every time before he commits a murder. He addresses his victims, so he is giving a chance. Okay, so I just want to bring in the idea of what a fair coin is, and I just want you to think about who gives you these probabilities. We all say that the coin is fair, but who tells who if someone on the road comes up to you and gives you a coin, how do you know that it is a fair coin, right? Just think about it. No, but assume that there is a coin like a fair coin. Okay, there is somewhere in the world there is a coin. Some genie, someone has come to you and told you that okay, this is a fair coin. Okay, just assume that. Now, as I said, it's a coin which has equal chance of turning up to be a head or a tail. Now, information, as I said, is proportional to the number of, is related to the element of surprise, right? if something is more probable, if something is bound to happen, there is less information associated with it. So essentially it is saying that if you're tossing a coin, what is the amount of information that it is about to convey? It is roughly, so there are two possibilities, right? Head or a tail. So that number 2 is roughly intuitively a measure of the information that it contains, just to begin with. Okay, so information is related to the number of possibilities, and in other words, it is inversely, equivalently, it is also inversely related to the chance of an event happening. So there is a less chance of an event happening, more the information, right? So that's what I have written here, proportional to 1 by 1 by 2. So 1 by 2 is the probability of a coin landing up head or a tail. Now, okay, and in fact, information, you can think that it is actually proportional to any monotonic function of the number of possibilities. For example, log. So it is proportional to 1 by 1 by 2. If 1 by 1 by 2 increases, log of 1 by 1 by 2 increases, right? So it is, there is some other reason as well to choose the log function, but what Shannon says is that it is instructive. It is good to use log of 1 by the probability to measure information. Okay, so what is the average information that is contained in a fair coin toss? So a fair coin toss has a probability of half, right? So log to the base 2 of 1 by 1 by 2 is the information that is contained, that gets conveyed for corresponding to the choice of head. So if you are, so there are two possibilities. What is the possibility of head coming up? 1 by 2, right? So log to the base 2, 1 by 1 by 2 is the information associated with that, and there is a tail. So corresponding to tail, information associated is log of 1 by 1 by 2, and there are two possibilities, right? So you take the average. It's just the usual average, a plus b by 2, right? There are two possibilities. If you do this, you see that there is the information that it conveys is 1. And what is the unit of information? And nowadays we all know what how information is quantified, right? We every day we talk about our internet connectivity speed. We talk in terms of gigabytes per second or gigabits per second, or so on and so forth, right? So where did this byte come from? Who started out? Who introduced this notion? Who told you that this should be measured in bytes? I'm just getting to that story. Okay, so this information, we say that a fair coin toss has 1 bit of information associated with it, in the sense that 1 bit means it is either a 0 or a 1. It is like a computer memory which can either store a 0 or a 1. So if a head comes, you call it 1. If a tail comes, you call it 0. So what it is saying is a fair coin toss has 1 bit of information associated with it. Okay, I hope I haven't confused you. So that is the story about the fair coin. Now, what is a biased coin? So usually we come across this example in a probability class, right? So what is a biased coin? So if you can recognize this movie here, so it's the movie Sholay, and in which if you have seen the movie, you will quickly realize that there is this instance in this movie where the character Jay, portrayed by Amitabh Bachchan, every time they are in a conflict, the other character Viru and Jay, if they are in a conflict, they decide it by tossing a coin, and every time we see that whenever Jay tosses a coin, he wins. Okay, and he says that if it is heads, I think if he's calling it heads, if it is heads, he wins, and he tosses the coin and it turns out to be heads. Now in the end, in the climax of the movie, we see that actually this coin is a coin in which it has on both sides head, right? So the probability of, if you toss that coin, the probability of a coin turning up to be head is 1, and it turning out to be tail is 0. So if someone asks you what is a biased coin is, so this is what I was trying to get to. So we can't, somebody gives you a coin, how do you know it's a biased coin or a fair coin, right? So I just wanted to, so this is an example, simple example of a biased coin with probability 1. It is going to be a head, right? Now, what is the what is a bias coin that we learn in probability class? The probability of head is p, where p is a number between 0 and 1, and the probability of tail is 1 by p. Now, if you remember the previous exercise that I did, the average information is p times the log of 1 by p. That is the information, and sorry, the second p should have been 1 minus p here. Apologies for that. And it should and plus 1 minus p times log of 1 by 1 minus p. So that is the average information that is contained in a biased coin toss experiment. Now, what is the average information in J's coin toss, like the coin toss that Amitabh Bachchan does? So, you see that in that case, the probability of say the head is 0, and then if you try to plug in 0 in this expression, it can get weird, right? I mean, you see that it's 0 log 1 by 0, which is infinity, right? But then there is something that you use. We observe that this function p log p, it is continuous. It is continuous in this interval 0 to 1. And if you are not convinced, maybe you can just, it's a basic exercise. You know what continuity is. So you can use the standard epsilon delta definition to convince yourself that you can just work it out and make sure that this is indeed a continuous function. And if you are more curious, you will kind of realize that in fact this function is actually uniformly continuous. If you are familiar with what a uniform continuity is, okay. So if you apply that, you see that p log p converges to 0. So the average information, according to, if you apply 0 in this expression, it turns out to be 0, which is intuitive, right? It is to Amitabh Bachchan, he knows that it is every time it is going to be a head. So there is no, as such, there is no information contained in it, right? So that is the basic idea of the coin toss. Now, as mathematicians would like to have it, they would like to generalize, right? Once you get a example case, you try to ask this question: is it generalizable? Under what general conditions does it hold? What all hypotheses are required? Every time we ask this question, right? So we prove a theorem. We ask, is it the bare minimum requirement to prove this theorem? Does this theorem hold in a more general setting under relaxed assumptions? Right? We all ask this question. Now, in a similar spirit, we were talking about what a binary entropy is. Entropy or the information that I didn't utter the word entropy earlier. So the information associated with a coin toss. Now, how do you measure information is the question that we are trying to ask. Now, if you have instead of a coin toss which has a probability p and 1 minus p, like so that is a Bernoulli distribution, right? Now you can think of a general discrete distribution, say p, which has n small n entities p1 to pn. So what do you mean by this to be a probability? These are non-negative numbers which add up to 1. This is how you define entropy. Now it is, I hope by this time it is familiar to you. So you have pi log 1 by pi. So this is similar to the p log 1 by p plus 1 minus p log 1 by 1 minus p expression that we saw earlier. So that is something called as the entropy. Now this is how you measure information. So entropy is how what you use to measure information. Okay. So the entropy of a pair coin toss is 1. The biased coin toss, coin with probability of head coming out to be 1, is 0. And that is how you measure information. So that is one of the fundamental insight that Shannon gave. He measured information using entropy. And if you just plot this function p log 1 by p plus 1 minus p log 1 by 1 minus p, this is how it looks. So it's in the interval 0 to 1, and it is a concave function in p, okay, and it has a maximum at 0.5. So if you observe 0.5 corresponds to the probability of head coming up in a coin toss, pair coin toss, right? That is where you have maximum information. Meaning, if you know that both chances are equally likely, ഒരു കോയിൻ നമ്മൾ ടോസ് ചെയ്യണം, അത് രണ്ടും ഒരേപോലെ സാധ്യത ഉണ്ടെന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ, that is when there is maximum information. That is when maximum information is getting conveyed, right? Compare it with the case of the biased coin. There is 0 information. So the maximum information is at the middle point. So there is some sort of symmetry associated with this entropy function. Okay, so I hope with all these examples, I have convinced you that there is some way to quantify information, measure information, and you can do it systematically. I've given you examples, but you can do it in a more systematic, axiomatic way. You can define all these things, and you can use entropy to quantify information. And you use what is the currency? Okay, it is bits. You measure information in bits. Now, you can keep asking this question for other similar examples rudimentary examples, the basic examples that you'll find in your probability class. Suppose you have a pair of dice which has 6 chances, all are equally likely. So 1/6 chance of every face coming up. What is the entropy of that? Okay, so you can try computing that. So that is how that is what I would like to say about quantifying information. Okay, now this is the man I was talking about. He is the author of the paper that I mentioned, who actually revolutionized the communication and who actually, in some sense, brought the digital revolution that we all are benefiting from. So it is all attributed to one, in some sense, to this paper. It is actually using using mathematical principles, he was able to argue out that how a communication system should be designed. Okay, so towards that, he defined what an information is. He introduced a way to measure what an information is. So that is just the one part of the story. From there it begins, and he uses various he brings in various revolutionary ideas. Everything coming from a mathematical background. Remember when in 1948 the transistors were as young as, like, maybe it was just getting invented. Okay, so the digital revolution still had not kicked in. Okay, when Shannon published this paper, the technology that was required to use his ideas to build a system was not in place. But he was able to use that using the power of mathematical reasoning. Okay, and I just gave you one way in which mathematicians would try to understand things. They would try to put it in a formal definition. They would try to, of course, I know that as an audience you might be familiar with these things, but I'm just reiterating how in what interesting ways these ideas that we think are so innocent, so casual, so വളരെ നിരുപദ്രവകരമാണെന്ന് നമുക്ക് തോന്നുന്ന, വളരെ സിമ്പിൾ ആണെന്ന് തോന്നുന്ന പല ഐഡിയാസും മാത്തമാറ്റിക്കൽ ടൂൾസും എത്ര ക്രിയേറ്റീവ് ആയിട്ടാണ് ഇതുപോലെയുള്ള ഫീൽഡുകളിൽ എഞ്ചിനീയേഴ്സ് യൂസ് ചെയ്തിട്ടുള്ളത് എന്നുള്ളതിന്റെ ഒരു ക്ലാസിക്കൽ എക്സാമ്പിൾ ആണ് ഈ ഷാനന്റെ 1948 പേപ്പർ. So that is about so what it did. Just getting back to what this paper introduced. So it introduced a field called information theory. It is not information technology. Information theory is actually an applied area of mathematics which makes use of statistics, ergodic theory, and other measure theory, all these tools, and it is an applied area of mathematics, and it gets used in various other fields as well, not just in communication. Okay, so using so this information theory, so this topic altogether, this was a new thing. Sorry, and he gave a axiomatically he gave a definition of what information is. He gave its properties, and he proved that this has some significance. You can always define something, right? But then what he went about and showed is, I'll try to give an example of that as well in the coming slides. He showed that how this entropy that I just introduced to you, right? How it can be used to in various exciting ways. It's quite similar to magic. We wouldn't expect that these things get used in such creative ways to yield such insightful results. So I'll just get into that. So that is one thing. And basically he used simple mathematical models to predict the performance of communication systems, which was not yet in place. So he told, like a visionary, like a magician, he just told that this is what you have to do. If you do this, you will be able to communicate at this rate, with this many number of bits. Okay. Now, in 1948, someone saying that it may not make sense to layman, but now we are familiar, right? When someone says that I have an internet connection of these many bits, gigabits, it's megabits, it's saying that, okay, it's a measure of how good your connection is, how quickly you can download your videos, how speed the communication is, right? But all this idea came from a mathematician come engineer way back in 1948. So that is where I'm getting to. Now I'll just give you a quick example of, and maybe try to conclude with that. I think I'll have maybe another 4 minutes as per the protocol, but maybe I'll just take another couple of minutes. Okay, that is fine. So this is a quick example. So there is something called as a weak law of large numbers or law of large numbers. Perhaps you would be familiar with it. If not, it is roughly something like this. Now I told you what a fair coin is, right? So I asked you, how do you know something is a fair? Who gives you these probabilities? You take a coin from your wallet. Who gives you? There is no number that is written on top of that coin, right? Saying that this is the probability of head, right? How do you know that? So one way to do this is just keep tossing. Okay, just keep tossing enough number of times. Say you toss 1,000 number of times. Say you get 400 times you get heads, 600 times you get tails. You can say that, okay, roughly the probability of a coin giving a head is 0.4. That is your estimate, but that is fine. That is one way to do it. Okay. Now, that is just a point that I would like to make. Now, just getting back to a fair coin. So, suppose somebody comes to you and give you a fair coin, tells you that this is actually a fair coin, probability of head and tail are equally likely. Now, you toss this coin 1,000 times. So, what would you intuitively expect? You expect that roughly 500 times the heads will turn up. Roughly, it can be say 480 or 520, but roughly around that number. With very high, there is a very good chance that the number of heads turning up would be 500. Equivalently, number of tails turning out also be roughly 500. That is what it means by a fair coin, right? Now, this idea that a fair coin, if you toss enough number of times, it will converge to its true average. Like the fraction of times the heads that you get, it will get to the value half with high probability. This statement, a formal way of saying this statement is one way. So weak law of large number formalizes this statement. So basically just keep this example in mind. So that is what about the weak law of large number is. Now what Shannon did is the following. So he said, suppose you are sending a text message. Now think of your cell phone. So to your cell phone, this text can seem like a random independent messages, right? It's some random sequence of symbols. It doesn't understand the meaning as such, right? So if you recall in the first statement in that paper, you see that also most of the time it has meaning, but we are not interested in it. That is what Shannon says as an engineer. So that is the same idea that is being communicated here. This to your cell phone, which is actually processing all this information and delivering it to someone else. This text can seem like a random sequence of symbols, right? Now, then he makes this assumption of that information source is something like a random process. I hope you are at least familiar with the terminology random process. And he's saying, as a matter of simplification, just assume that it is a independent and identically distributed random process. What does it mean? Just think of the coin toss experiment. Every time you are tossing a coin, whatever you did previously is not going to affect every time you're just keeping on tossing the coin, right? So whatever you did previously is not going to affect what you're going to do the next time. And the coin is the same, right? You are not replacing the coin. It is the same fair coin. So that is what it means by identically distributed. And the fact that whatever happens in the previously is not going to influence your experiment is the idea of independence. So he assumed that this information, the text sequences, the symbols that you are typing and sending across, the algorithm will think of it as sitting inside your phone, will think it as a sequence, a random sequence of symbols. Okay. Now suppose there are n symbols. Okay, we just think of all the possibilities, all the letters, all the emojis, everything, whatever you like. So all these are encoded in a certain way, right? So suppose there are n symbols. Suppose there are say 10 symbols. For example, it is not actually 10 symbols, but as an example, assume that there are 10 symbols. Now, suppose this whatever you are sending, okay, it could be anything. It is a sequence of symbols I said, right? So whatever sequence that you send the first time, it will be x1. The sequence, the symbol that you send the next time is x2, and nth time it is xn. Okay. Now, what is the probability of that sequence? It is just the product of the individual probabilities, right? It is the product of individual probabilities. Now, with some effort, maybe since I don't have a blackboard, I may not be able to write it and show it to you, but so this is just so I'm not doing anything sacred here. If you just see the slide here, this product of probabilities, if you just massage a bit, if you just rearrange the terms, it is possible to write it in terms of this, in this form. Okay, it is the so what I'm trying to get to is that the product of this probabilities, he actually showed that uh, these probabilities can be expressed. It is roughly the kind of sequences that your algorithm will see will have a certain probability, and roughly the probability of seeing a long, if you're considering a long sequence, the probability of seeing any long sequence is the same, and that is roughly 2 power minus n h of p. So h of p is the entropy. uh, so there is some basic math to it. There is nothing, there is no graduate level math associated with it. It is just uh, rearranging the terms and writing it, but I'm not getting into it. But what he showed that is that, argued it, is that this probability is roughly the same, some 2 power minus n h of p. And using that, he showed that the number of bits required to represent a long sequence is roughly, if you're looking at an n length sequence, it is roughly n times h of p. So if you're not with me at this point, if you lost the train of thought, just forget what I said. But what he is trying to say is that we are all familiar with compressing algorithms, right? We use these compressing things to compress our files and send through email and things like that, right? So what is happening is that you have a big file, you are compressing it to a small file, but when you are retrieving it back, you are essentially seeing the same file itself, right? You are using a PDF, you are compressing it, you are sending it to someone, someone opens it, and he doesn't see a scrambled PDF, right? He just gets to see the exact same PDF that you sent, right? So what is the magic? If you are able to, so you have a 100 MB file, you are compressing it to a 50 MB file. So something is lost, right? But even if when something is lost, when your other person receives it, he is able to get it back to the same thing. So there is some magic associated with it, right? So what Shannon says is that there is some number, this entropy that you see there, it is actually a fundamental quantity, in the sense that it is the lowest, it is in some sense the lowest possible limit up to which you can compress. In the sense that if you are, just if you are not, if you think that I'm confusing you, just understand, taking the point that this entropy that we got familiar with it earlier is getting used in this data compression. Actually, that guided the development of most of the data compression algorithms that we started using. Okay, so the basic idea of entropy played a role. How much can you compress a file? It is the entropy, that is the answer. If how much you can compress, the answer would be, it is the entropy. And it is difficult to get into details of this thing in a short talk, but I just wanted to make you familiar with that idea. And of course, there are other similar things that he have got into, but so there are there is something called as a so you're sending message, right? As I said, you saw that block diagram. If you recall, there is something called as a noise source there. So in that noise source, so whatever you send, the channel, the medium between your two transmitter and receiver corrupts the message. So if something gets corrupted, how do you retrieve it? So that is the question. So Shannon came up with a solution. He didn't give a solution, but he said, he gave a direction. He told you what possibly could be done to circumvent this problem. Now, then the engineers following that, they have used a good deal of whatever you study in your algebra or topology. All these techniques gets used, and they come up with what are known as codes. It's there in our cell phones. Actually, the kind of codes that you see in the cell phone doesn't use fully make use of the algebraic or topological properties, but still that has guided them to develop these kind of theory has guided them to develop the codes which helps you finally get you the message that you see. Okay, so a great deal of math goes into um, so when I am talking to you and you are hearing it, actually all this math is inherently getting used. Okay, so that is the point that I'm trying to make. And of course, then another smart thing that he did was to use to model noise as a Gaussian noise. So I'm not getting into it because of the lack of time. So he made use of okay. So maybe I'll just skip that one. Now, so there are various types of techniques that he have used from he has borrowed from the mathematical things to prove his point. Now, so I'll just quickly conclude. So basically, what Shannon was basically an engineer. So he actually was an engineer at the Bell Labs, and he devised so many things. So he devised a robot. In those days, he devised a robot that could solve a maze. In the sense that if you just put this mouse inside that kind of path, it will find its way out on its own. Okay, you don't need to guide it. You just put that device that he is holding there. He just puts it somewhere. By its own, he will find the way out of that place. So he was curious enough to build these kind of systems. Now he was a unicyclist. You can see that he was a so there is a single wheel. He used to ride a cycle with a single wheel. Okay, he was a juggler. You know what jugglery is, right? You just throw up balls in there, and he could. So he was a professional juggler, and he was a mathematician. Okay, and so what I'm trying to get to is that what can we learn from all this, maybe to conclude it. So 2 points. One is you can use your whatever math that you are learning, you can use it in creative ways. If you understand the math, you can use it to solve actually the various real world problems, and that is even if you think that it is not getting used, it is not the case. Everything that you see around, all this communication things happening, everything, a great deal of mathematics, all the things that you learn gets used in one way or the other. So, and Shannon was one of the pioneer in doing that. And of course, it also tells us that you should have fun. So learning and fun can go hand in hand. There is nothing like stops you from not juggling or unicycling while doing this all amazing math. So that is another thing. And yeah, so to conclude, what I've tried to communicate is that information can be mathematically quantified, and simple things that you learn in your undergraduate classes gets used in various magnificent ways to solve effectively many real world problems. Like for example, you are able to talk to your friend over a phone. And if you think that you are able to do that, actually you are paying tribute to all this grand techniques or simple techniques that you learn. There are some people around there who use these things to build systems. They take intuitions from this. So math actually help them to basically the fundamental guiding principle is that math can be used to optimize things. It can be used to find the best way of solving problems. So, so you can learn a great deal of these things. And yeah, so with that, maybe I'll just conclude. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to take. And if also if you have any questions, or if you would like to know something more about what I've been talking about, you can contact me. And thank you for listening, and thank you for your time. Yeah, so that is there from my part. Hello. Hello.
Yes,
Hello, am I audible?
yes, sir. Audible.
Yes, sir,
Yeah.
you're audible.
Thank you, sir.
So yeah, so that is there from my part, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to take those.
Hey, students, if you have any questions, please put forward. He's waiting for your questions.
Okay, so yeah, so I know it was a like having a talk at 2 p.m. on a Saturday and a Friday afternoon is a big thing. But I hope you are all at your home or another your comfort space, and I hope that I didn't finally uh, make you sleep. So anyway, thank you for your time.
Asmiya,
Thank you for the session, sir. I invite Mrs. Sarita, Assistant Professor, Department of Mathematics and Sun Women's College for the vote of thanks.
Yeah. Respected chief guest of the day, Dikshit sir, principal, vice principal, the participants of the webinar, good evening all. We cannot always run away from the present pandemic situation, but we have to live with the situation. There arises importance of such webinar. Our honorable chief guest, Dikshit sir, has given us an informative session on the topic mathematics of digital communication, which was beyond words for me to describe, sir. Thank you, sir, for a wonderful session, sir. Thank you. Next, I extend my sincere thanks to our principal, Advocate Farida ma'am, who served as the backbone of our institution, gives all her support for the activities. Thank you, ma'am. I am thankful to our Vice Principal Arif sir, who is always with us as one among us, giving constant support. Thank you, sir. Our HOD Shijala Miss deserve a special thank for arranging such a wonderful webinar for us. Thank you, ma'am. But last not but least, I extended my heartful thanks for all the technicians for their technical support, all my colleagues, my dear students, and all the participants of the webinar. Once again, thank you all. Thank you.
Sure, thanks. Okay, thanks. Bye.
thank you, sir.
The feedback form is posted in the chat. Please fill it for your certificate.
ഫീഡ്ബാക്ക് ഫോം എല്ലാവരും ഫില്ല് ചെയ്യാം, എന്നാലേ ഉള്ളൂ സർട്ടിഫിക്കറ്റ് കിട്ടുള്ളൂ കേട്ടാ. അപ്പൊ താങ്ക് യു ഓൾ.
Thank you.
ഫോർത്ത് സെം എക്സാമിനൊക്കെ നന്നായി പഠിച്ചോളൂ കേട്ടോ എല്ലാരും. എന്നെ കേൾക്കുന്ന വിദ്യാർത്ഥിനി സുഹൃത്തുക്കളെ, വീട്ടിലിരുന്ന് നന്നായി പഠിക്കൂ. പരീക്ഷ വരാൻ പോകുന്നത് അറിയാലോ. കേക്കുണ്ടോ മക്കളെ? എല്ലാരും സുഖായിരിക്കണോ? കുഴപ്പമൊന്നുമില്ലല്ലോ?
അൽഹംദുലില്ലാ, കുഴപ്പമൊന്നുമില്ല. മിസ്സിന് സുഖല്ലേ?
സുഖായിരിക്കണോ? പരീക്ഷയ്ക്ക് നന്നായി പഠിച്ചെഴുതൂ കേട്ടോ. തമാശയായിട്ട് കാണരുത്. വീട്ടിലിരിക്കുകയാണ്, നല്ലപോലെ സമയം കിട്ടുന്നുണ്ട്. നന്നായി പഠിച്ച് പരീക്ഷ എഴുതണം.
അപ്പൊ മിസ്സേ വൈൻഡപ്പ് ചെയ്യാലോ അല്ലെ? വൈൻഡപ്പ് ചെയ്തോളൂ കേട്ടാ.
മൈൻഡപ്പ് ചെയ്തോളൂ ഷിജുല. ഞാൻ അവരെ കണ്ടതുകൊണ്ട് ഞാൻ പറഞ്ഞതാണ്. പരീക്ഷയാണല്ലോ വരാൻ പോകുന്നത്.
ഓക്കെ മിസ്സേ.
നിങ്ങളുടെ ഡിപ്പാർട്ട്മെന്റിൽ നിന്ന് റാങ്ക് ഒക്കെ പ്രതീക്ഷിക്കുന്നുണ്ട് ഞാൻ. അപ്പൊ അതുപോലെ എഫേർട്ട് എടുക്കണം എല്ലാരും.
അതെ അതെ, കിട്ടിയതാണ് ഒരു പ്രാവശ്യം റാങ്ക്. അപ്പൊ ഇനിയുള്ള കുട്ടികളിൽ നിന്ന് റാങ്ക് പ്രതീക്ഷിക്കുന്നുണ്ട്.
തീർച്ചയായിട്ടും. അപ്പൊ ടീച്ചേഴ്സ് കൂടെ നിന്ന് എനിക്ക് പഠിപ്പിച്ചു തരുമ്പോ അതൊക്കെ പഠിക്കണ്ടേ? റിസൾട്ട് കാണട്ടെ ഞാൻ കേട്ടോ.
അപ്പൊ എല്ലാവരും നന്നായിട്ട് എക്സാം എഴുതേട്ടാ.
ഓൾ ദ ബെസ്റ്റ്.
ഓൾ ദി ബെസ്റ്റ്.
Thank you, ma'am.
ഓക്കെ, അപ്പൊ എന്നാലും എൻഡ് ചെയ്തോളൂ കേട്ടാ.